You're very welcome to the Overlap Rugby podcast. I'm Shane, that's Daragh.
How you doing?
This is number 58, and we're going to be talking about all the rugby as we normally are. This week, we're going to be looking ahead to the second round of the Rugby Championship, and in the context of doing that, we're going to look back on last week's action as well, by way of previewing the games upcoming. And then after that, we'll be looking to the Pacific Nations Cup as well, which is some Tier 2 rugby going on at the same time. And then we'll, in the context of that, we'll go do a review segment of the Fiji Maori game last weekend, and then we'll finish up with our news of the week as well.
Yep.
Also going to say a brief thank you, 200 subs. Delighted with that.
Yeah, very good, very good.
A lot of things happened last week. Welcome to all our new Fiji friends, and we're delighted with all that. And again, for anyone who is new here, please like, subscribe, click the bell, comment.
Absolutely comment. We enjoy very much enjoying getting a bit of chat going on.
A bit of discourse on the rugby is what we want. That's kind of we're going to be covering the rugby up to the World Cup, and we're looking forward to common threads with a few different perspectives in them. That's what we're mad for. So do you have anything?
Just one other sort of semi-plug is that maybe, and we're not sure yet, we might be doing a live stream of the games if we can figure it out and if we can get up on time. It's been a crazy hectic week, and the hecticness is only continuing. Himself, musician, has a gig on both Friday and Saturday, so we'll see if he's around to get up for the games on Saturday morning.
But it should we do? We'll try and get it set up and do a live stream, kind of live reaction, and just get the comments going and premiere it on YouTube.
It'd just be an experiment to see if we could live stream during a game and maybe interact with you guys and get a clock up on the screen. Comment if you're interested in that anyway.
For sure. Let us know. But it's a thought. Amusing currently.
We'll see if we can figure it out in time for Saturday. But if not,
it will be upcoming anyway. We'll definitely do at least one of the World Cup games that way, and if not sooner, we're going to try and trial that for sure.
100%.
But without further ado, then we're going to crack onto it. And no better place to start than with the Rugby Championship, which got underway last weekend. And this week we have the big one, All Blacks South Africa, which is between the two contenders for the tournament now that revealed themselves last week. I suppose we start with just the Springboks, just because they had such a game last week. They picked an audacious B team. Well, it's tough to say B. It's just kind of disparaging to say that about the players that were named. The Springboks just have such talent that they're sifting through options and combinations. But what it looked on paper to be a kind of a risky team, and certainly leaving a lot of their key weapons out. But they absolutely blew Australia away, and it was just to prove the virtue in it when you have hungry, informed guys that are kind of forcing their way into the jersey.
When a move like that works, Rassie's going to be feeling very, very happy.
Sure,
it was risky, but and I think I made the point last week is that team on paper was significantly stronger than the Wallaby team. That's
true. B team or A team is kind of irrelevant.
They have incredible depth. They have assembled, I think, probably the best squad in the world. They were keen to use it, and they performed outstandingly. Just well above where the Wallabies seem
to have regressed comparatively, but the Springboks are just they were quicker, sharper from minute one, and they're so clinical in terms of how they took their chances, and by contrast Australia just really weren't. They had a few times in possession and it was just very impotent, whereas the Yankees, with little Herschel Yankees, what a debut from 9. He was just pulling the strings, putting the Aussies to shame, but running the first try he got was just a perfect inside support line. The second try was just beautiful opportunism and just speed of thought. And he was
it was all game. He was really looking Aaron Smith-esque out there. He was hungry. He was throwing beautiful passes. He was playing aggressively.
He was making some tackles, and he wasn't shirking them. I don't think he missed one. He made a couple.
And you know what? It's a bit of a lesson from Rassie to the Eddie Joneses of the world out in the Northern Hemisphere, who Herschel Yankees burst onto the scene with the Stormers this year, played outstanding footy for them, and they said, all right, first test of the year, ahead of a World Cup, absolutely we're going to throw you in there and see what you can do, and it's paid off in spades, and that's obviously massive. So very, very exciting times to get Herschel Yankees in there, and you see the benefit of that squad selection is that now they feel very confident in their 3 options at scrum half. The defence, I think, was a good thing to take a look at from the box last week. I thought they shut down. Obviously, it's a different kettle of fish, but they shut down the Wallabies really well. They played with that very aggressive blitz. It was reminiscent of what they were doing last year. The wingers Nkosi and Mapimpi were very, very narrow.
Biting in and coming up, and it asks a question of the opposition offense to really either throw the Finn Russell pass or unpick them in some other kind of risky way, and the Aussies just had no answer for that.
The Aussies hadn't picked Curly Beale, and you knew straight away that there was a problem with that, just not having another distributor in there, and that was isolated. I mean, every time that Bernard Foley got the ball in that first half, he was surrounded by Springboks, and ultimately they resigned to just playing off 9 for much of the first half, and that was a key win and another very positive step for what has been a great journey of the Springbok defence since Rassie's come in.
And he's shorted up no end. They're not leaking the same kinds of tries that some of their domestic teams are still more used to or more want to do. Like, it seems to be they're ironing that out at international level. All of them want to step up and make their tackles and plug those holes aggressively, and then the mistakes that are made are born of like just doing that the right way. Like, I thought Esterhazen in the centre had like an up and down first half where some of it was like felt like trying too hard at times and got himself in compromised positions, but he was getting in the face of the Aussies the whole time.
Well, he made a huge tackle early doors, and then a couple of phases later Francois Lowe got the steal, and that was actually what brought out that first Herschel Yankees try, which was a really wonderful try off turnover ball. And just overall in terms of where they're at, they just crucially more than anything else, obviously great depth, playing great rugby, but they seem in sync with one another. You know, they had their fans of all races and colours just screaming, jumping up and down in a buzzing Ellis Park. They had Captain Khaleesi as the water boy coming on, and there was just
great value for it actually.
Such a feel good factor around them, and that was with the 15 boys, the 15 starters. Off in New Zealand.
That's incredible. Crazy to think. But what it was also like, what was good about this particular combination of players, and particularly I mean the back line actually, is it didn't seem to compromise the style of play that their A team are going for. When you have a Faf, an Andre Pollard at 10 and then Willie Leroux at 15, you're playing kind of a similar way as Yankees and then Gallant at fullback, who looks similar. He has a similar distribution game to Villy as well.
Gallant was another very positive experiment. I think he was very sharp and quite tactful. He had some very soft, nice touches. He had some loose touches early in the first half.
That's why he reminds me of Villy a little. Like, he's the same mould of fullback, which is why you're not really seismically changing
with
the system.
a worse pass and a better boot, I would say.
Awesome, that's probably fair.
So all very positive from last week, and a big side looking at it too. Etzebeth, I thought he's come into the side this week. Like, a man under pressure to step up like that was terrific, and he was a captain of the sort of midweek team. Is always a mad buzz on the Lions tour, and that was sort of Etzebeth's position last week. He obviously would have wanted to play this week, which he now will get to.
But it's like the collision zone by the end was just all South Africa, and it was like himself and Peter Steff from 7 as well was awesome. That little chip over the top was lovely stuff from a
gorgeous.
Big man. And then like they just looked bullied them the whole time. But Nambi was good, I thought, when he went on as well. He sort of had a pretty solid showing. They just looked much better. I thought from number 8, Francois Lowe was excellent, really necessary there.
He was key.
He outworked Hooper on the other side, because even though he was wearing number 8 with Peter Steff at 7, like, it really is him doing the kind of jackling work, and he was outworking his opposite number in that instance. And he's unlucky to miss out this week.
When he's on the bench.
He's on the bench,
and
but
he may matter with Matt Todd.
Maybe throwing him in. This is it. Well, have we any other Springbok points? I think.
Well, we'll pivot on just to looking at
one thing
last
is
week.
Nkosi is slightly unlucky to miss out, I feel, this week, and he's only because I thought he had a really stellar game in Nkosi the week just gone. He's not quite a left winger, which is Mapimpi is, so they've gone with Mapimpi
because they want Cheslin.
Which is like, it's all fair, but I thought it was slightly harsh because I thought Nkosi was flying.
I totally agree. I thought Mapimpi was like,
he did great.
He
did one or two looser touches.
He did great to cover the space for the try that was scored on the right wing by I can't even remember who scored the Wallaby try.
On the right wing
was it
Foley
one? It wasn't Hale Petty who got it, but it was one of them.
It was Hale Petty.
Yes,
it was Hale Petty.
Okay.
Finished it well, actually.
But Mapimpi did great to cover the space, but then was just a little soft in the tackle. He actually made time to make the tackle and then didn't.
Yeah. Well, Hale Petty's a deceptively tough guy as well. He has a
little
bit
as tough as Ben Smith.
He's not.
Whom Mapimpi will be lining up against this week. And sort of speaking of, the All Blacks had a different day, but it was a dangerous game against Argentina.
Like on balance, I think they have more positives coming out of it than negatives, because they picked a very odd team to go over for the first game of the season. It's a very kind of odd lineup for it, where you have your Aaron Smith and Bowden. So you're kind of breaking the band up as far as like TJ's coming on with the water bottle, because he's not even on the bench. So you're breaking up the Bowden and TJ band a little bit. Then you have Mafi and Leonard Brown, both playing well, having stellar seasons in different teams entirely, and kind of, we were harkening on it last week that Mafi is great, but somehow doesn't necessarily fit the mould of an All Black centre a lot when you think of the winning All Blacks and Sonny Bill with like crazy offloads. He's just doesn't have that distributing game. And then when you have the backfield covered by Ben Smith from fullback, was tidy enough, was beaten once in the air by Boffelli, made one or two looser plays than I would have thought, but he showed some classy plays as well.
It was one of his worst games I've seen him have
for an All Black.
Now he's coming from a very different benchmark to evereverody else.
Yes, yeah.
But there's no question it was one of his weaker games.
Yeah, and you don't normally notice him make mistakes, and I think I counted two.
A couple of two fairly crucial ones. And you just straight up getting beaten by Boffelli in the air for that try, and that's just Boffelli is a younger, more athletic kind of guy, and sometimes that happens, especially his age.
I also think he had the angle there. I think Ben Smith, that it wasn't just Ben Smith. I thought the whole backfield were kind of wanting for that Sanchez flick. They really weren't expecting it, and they weren't covering that space. But
the second was worse though, when he was put into space and it was a great scrag on him by I think it was Maroney, and he sort of just tossed the ball to nobody, and it was a try scoring opportunity, and he blew that. It was very un-Ben Smith. Yeah, and I actually thought that the whole performance was quite un-All Blacks. I mean, like you can say they've more, a lot. They've more positives you can say, but like their defense is looking good.
Yeah, and actually their two wingers, Sevu Reece, I actually was drawing questions about his defensive chops, but now I just really love watching him defend. He gets stuck in, and he really does. When he nails someone, he nails them. He makes a good hit. But it's sometimes his spacing on backfield that I'm now worried about a bit more. But his tackling is fairly solid. But it was much more of a defensive-minded All Blacks, which is something we've seen work into their ethos over the last year.
It started on the Lions tour last year, and like it's progressively gotten worse, and they've progressively been losing more games since they started implementing it. What they're trying seemed like they're picking Bowden Barrett and having him kick the ball a load, and it's like they're very, very good, but if they want to play the forward battle and the kicking game and sort of the territory, like Steve Hansen has that great quote from the Lions tour of, he always laughs when teams come and say they're going to take us on up front, like you don't know what you're in for, etc. And there's a degree of truth to that. They have a superb pack, a world-class pack, and excellent out halves and backs and game managers, and they've built they're building a squad around a defense and around a forward pack and around a set piece that's much tougher. But the problem is that if they're going to go about games in that way, and if that's the way they're going to go around winning games, the difference between them and the Englands and South Africas and Irelands and Wales of the world is less than, say, 4 years ago, when they almost bypassed a lot of that stuff. They did have a great forward pack, but it was speed and it was precision and it was offloading, and they were so much better at that than any of the other top tier nations. And they just blew everybody away, and you just right now, especially with that side last week in that performance, you just didn't see any of that.
No. And I was also seeing some signs as to how, like, Ireland had great success in the Chicago game is a bit more anomalous, but the game in Dublin, when we just managed to hold the ball for so long and bully them and put them out of the game, really. And you're seeing the downside of them kicking it a lot by way of exiting, and then they're doing a lot of that, and against teams that are not really in a ding. Like this one against Argentina, it was just a bit more back and forth with possession because both sides were coughing it up to one another, and that means the All Blacks can play themselves in. But you're going to meet teams, Ireland for one, but others are going to try and do that, where they're just going to try and hold the pill against them for 7, 8, 9 minutes.
And no matter how good your defence is, it's going to struggle.
Yeah, well, it's just going to make a load of tackles and be tired by the end of it. Like it seems, they're kind of drifting from their roots. Now, they are building a lot with that. Their scrum looks better than 4 years ago. And that means that they can launch off that set piece. They still launch some interesting strike moves off scrum. They do have avenues to score loads of different tries. But they just seem a little bit disjointed. And that particular selection...
It's defensive, though. It's very defensive-minded.
I saw a few little sets where they were working Jordy Barrett in as the the exit man off kickoff, and it was all fine kicking, punting, but it was all a bit slow and a bit.
It's strange to see a guy like Jordy Barrett get a winger's jersey in an All Black team anyway. Yeah. Just because it's very much not in the mould of an All Black wing to have this guy who isn't altogether that quick, who's traditionally, he likes to play second 5/8, he likes to play first centre, and he also likes to play fullback, and he's in on the wing, which is the finishing position. The guy's not really a finisher, he's more of a kicker of a ball and a tactician, and it's kind of a symbol of where they have been going. And look, they struggled for it. They got themselves into a bruising battle
that they could have lost,
forward battle that they could have lost. Exactly.
Had Argentina been that little bit sharper on a few of those occasions, they'd had a few. They had was it Maroney getting bundled into touch 5 minutes from time as well.
They had like one right at the death where the All Blacks coughed it up, and all they had to do was just pop it up and be the quick hands, and they could have ran it in. Needless to say, the maul that ended it all, which was an example of a gritty edge that the All Blacks have added to their game, the ability to shut that down.
For sure.
But there are issues. I thought Artie Sevilla was great. I thought Artie Sevilla was exactly what the All Blacks needed, and exactly what could be what bails the All Blacks out of any of these problems is just the amount of playmakers that they have in that team. And when they started that game so sluggishly and so slowly, and then Artie just out of nowhere, I think off the base of a scrum, he had a couple of big line breaks, and he was just making things happen. And that's crucial.
You need that in any team, just players to step up given moments when there's a lull and take it. And they like on balance, looking at the two teams just neutrally, the All Blacks just deserved to edge that game by around that margin, and it was the fact that from Argentina's perspective, they weren't clinical enough. They weren't themselves, their clinical selves in executing those plays that were there for them. And also equally, Sanchez, that intercept, that like brain fart of an intercept just at half time, like they only ended up losing by 4. That was a 7-point swing.
It's amazing. It's amazing how the All Blacks managed to do that. Like there's some sort of wizardry that goes on in the 5 minutes between half time where the All Blacks just inexplicably acquire 10 points without doing anything, and that wins them the game invariably.
And it was.
But how often do you see them go through a whole 40-minute period without scoring?
Not often, and that is symptomatic of what we were talking about. It was a slower game they were playing. It was more of a tactical kind of affair, and
the Argentinian defense is good, but it's not the best in the world.
No, and you think that the All Black attack is what should be finding tries in a 40-minute period of play. Should be finding tries plural against that Argentina team. There were loose
moments in that game. There were moments where the ball was in play for 3, 4, 5 minutes, especially up around that 15-minute mark. Everything was going crazy, and the All Blacks weren't capitalising on opportunities.
And that's like it's a bit of a crazy thing to think of that as fans for so long, and just it's not what you think of when you think All Blacks, but it's kind of worked its way in. What did you think of by the way, Sam Cane, who was something we actually it was an oversight on us last week. We were having a discussion about the 7 jersey and failed to mention Sam Cane, which is a bit Captain Sam Cane. I thought he was like solid, but he's still, to my mind, not quite what I want in a 7.
He
reminds me a little of Tipperick. Actually, he's kind of a roving athlete type player, but playmaking steps up, but a few times sometimes lets him down. Like some of his hands sometimes let him down.
He had a bad drop after a Bodie break in the second half.
That was true. That was try time, but for that drop. And there were a few moments like that actually as well. They did butcher 1 or 2 Bodie breaks.
Bodie was a bit like Artie Sevilla. He was trying to make things happen. He's still
such value,
the most talented back,
and he's at 15 this week now, which is
this is a good point of pivoting on. I know the Sam Cane question. I think he's third choice in reality behind Todd and Artie.
That would be where I'd have him too. But
where Artie and Todd, as the case may be. But anyway, that sort of more scathing analysis of the All Blacks is exactly where I had drawn up the notes to, and I was fully ready to back the Springboks. But
then they
the
picked this team
announcement this week was cheering me up from them, because it's exactly
it's much more All Black. It reads like an All Blacks team.
It's exactly what they need. Moanga at 10 and Barrett at 15.
With Ben Smith still there on the wing.
With Ben Smith still there on the wing is exactly what they need. It's 2 distributors. It's chaos. It's making things happen. And Sonny Bill, I think, is going to be like earlier in the year. I was hemming and hawing. I didn't know what the All Blacks were going to look like, and I was thinking maybe Leonard Brown and Crotty might be the way to go. But actually,
as it goes on,
Sonny Bill is going to become, especially with the All Black attack and multi-phase looking so blunt.
Yeah.
And they're going to be up against a wily-ass Springbok defence with Delindi and Am and just that general
very
rush.
defensive, strong centre. And actually with Pollard at 10, there's a physical wall to try and get through.
There's not a lot of space in there.
Yeah.
Sonny Bill's offloads are a difference maker.
Yeah.
I think he's going to be
massive. It's like what we were saying about Billy Vunipola bringing that to Saracens. It just kind of breaks, and England as well. And like when you take them out of the team, and suddenly all the multi-phase, all the system that we worked in was kind of built around this guy throwing a loose thing that breaks everything up, and without it just means 10 more phases and not necessarily a try. Whereas Sonny Bill, if he's at all fit and if he's at all sharp, could be a real catalyst for some crazy play. And with that much speed out wide now that Bowden's at 15
and Rico's back
as well, this is the other thing.
That's a winger. That's an All Black winger, Rico Ioane. He's a finisher. He's going to find tries if you give him the chance. So I just think it's a great team. Great to see Sam Whitelock back. Cody Taylor in there. Like it reads like an All Black team, and it's intimidating.
It reads like the kind of one that could start a quarter final should they win the World Cup time.
100%,
you know, like they could very well be the 15 that goes out.
The only weak man I'm a little hemming and hawing about Goodhue in there, just especially when you consider defensively, just because I don't know if he's the best defender, Goodhue. And Sonny Bill, for all of his bulk, can be a little loose defensively as well.
Just positionally, he can get himself a bit all over the place.
I think on balance, it's going to be Sonny Bill and Crotty, just because Crotty is the sharpest defensive centre that they have.
Sonny Bill in a Brown though.
They're too similar. They're too similar. I think you need a defender in there with Sonny Bill. And as someone who's going to pick lovely lines off him. And Crotty is all that.
Enor.
No, still too defensively loose. I want Crotty in there.
Crotty is to be fair a very, very wily player and solid as a rock. And I love his intellect on the pitch. He's a little thinker in there, and he does outsmart some dumb centres sometimes. Goodhue is in and a bit more defensively loose, like we've been hinting at. Like he's been guilty of a few floundering tackles once or twice.
Every Crusaders try, virtually like about half of the Crusaders tries that they conceded, there's a Goodhue missed tackle in there. That's not as bad as you think as a stat, because they didn't concede too many tries.
Didn't concede that many. Ask the Rebels about it.
But they did concede some tries, and they were almost always little Goodhue errors.
To be fair, he's defending the 13 channel. That's where you're going to get exposed.
This is test level. You know, this is the game. Crotty can defend the 13 channel.
And he's lined up against Lutanio Am, which is
who's like. He may build his reputation on being a defensive centre, but has his tricks.
He has his little plays. He has his absolutely vital tries in him that come every now and then. The Springboks look equally good this week. It's the same kind of thing. It's actually they've both named such great sides for it. They've got the band back together for the Springboks.
I think Steve Hansen's hand was forced by Heineke Meyer's very obvious planning. And he had picked that B team, and the B team went and hammered Australia, and it was just rubbing his hands together. And if the All Blacks had picked some wishy-washy half and half kind of squad for this game,
could be getting embarrassed.
They would have been beaten, and now they've picked
the
proper All Black team.
What feels like their team at the moment as it stands.
And the Springboks too. The Springbok team is just brilliant. I mean, there's intimidation all over that team. Etzebeth from last week. Etzebeth is the guy who gets
a nod, gets rewarded for a good performance.
Which I think is fair.
Snyman on the bench to bail him out because he may get tired come 60 minutes, but Snyman's a monster to come into.
And Mostert getting the starting jersey as well is interesting. And then obviously Peter Steff came in at 7 with Francois Lowe to come on. I was wondering if that their team came out before the All Blacks, and I'm wondering if the side of Matt Todd in the 7 jersey might have made Rassie go, maybe I should have picked Francois Lowe.
Perhaps. But he's on the bench just in case. And there is it Quagga Smith is more of
a blindside, and
he is. Well, he's one of those kind of flying sevens. He likes a carry and a hurdy-durdy kind of barnstorming rush, but he's not quite the poach man. And whereas Matt Todd is. So it's curious. That's one of the few times in the All Blacks in the last year that they'll be lining up with the only open side on the pitch. They're normally kind of lacking for one compared to the opposition. So it's an interesting look. They may be looking to snap full ball, and that backline. If Matt Todd has an industrious game, that backline are primed to convert turnover possession.
Yes, much more so than the side that turned out last week for them. So that's a concern for the Boks. Obviously, the offensive breakdown is going to be massive, and just so to the collision zone generally. I think that's going to be a huge telling factor. The Boks like to get ahead of steam about them. They like to get over the gain line, get faff, make it quick. get it to Pollard's hands, and that's when they can become irresistible. Pollard is either going to whip it to Am or back in behind to Dilly LaRue.
Lindy's going to smash it up, and he always does.
Or back in behind to LaRue, and then all of a sudden they're outside you. The Springbok attack has been purring along ever since Faf came back in when Rassie got the job. The England series last year, it has been just
the pace perfect for them.
A ferocious combination of just power and speed, with offloads only at the right time, but perfect running lines generally. And it's a very tough thing to defend. So I think the All Blacks will be looking first and foremost. They have quietly been building themselves a bit of an identity around their defence. They're going to be trying to shut that down. To not let Etzebeth do what he did to the Wallabies, to the likes of Brodie and Sam. And he won't be able to.
The Wallabies were, like, I actually thought for them that it was Isaac Rodda was the one who wasn't at the races physically, and then by the second half it was just the collision zone was all South Africa, and I suspect that's going to be in New Zealand here. Now this is going to be a different task, and I think the All Blacks will be very much up for the physical challenge of them, and they'll have some maul spoiling plays, they'll have some shutdown in the centre plays, they'll be trying to. It'll be a tactical arm wrestle for the first little while, but then when it breaks, who's going to capitalise? It's going to be who's clinical enough to do it. And based on last week, the Springboks have a bit more practice of being clinical.
They do. A lot of these guys are a little out of form, out of practice. I mean, Faf and Pollard together haven't neither of them have played a game of rugby in a couple of months either. So that there's that factor as well going into this. But it feels like they're being primed and ready to go. Yeah,
this is the game they've been targeting.
They should come out flying. But what's interesting is, like, it's obviously interesting whether the All Black defence is going to shut the Springboks down. Whether the Springboks are going to shut the All Blacks down is interesting as well, because like prior in the run up to this, when I was doing the notes before the All Blacks had named their team, I was thinking to myself, Screech Rugby had a great little moment in his video of the game last week where he just in a second, his crazy jump cuts like he is, but just in a second he isolated just a clear overlap for the All Blacks on the left hand side when they were deep in the Argentinian 22, and they just didn't take it, and instead they went the other way for a forward hit up. Like watching some bastardized Northern Hemisphere team, and it's just making you deeply, deeply concerned. And so I was thinking, there's no way with the Springbok rush and their multi-phase and a brilliant defender like Amin at 13 who's just not going to give you an inch, there's no way that their multi-phase is going to break. Their multi-phase is so poor right now, it's just not going to break down the box, as it didn't the Argentinians. But with two distributors and a TJ Perinara and a Ben Smith and a Rico Ioane
and a Sonny
Bill offloading in the middle, all of a sudden those odds change, and it becomes a super interesting battle when the All Blacks have the ball. I'm very curious to see if the Boks can shut them down, or if the All Blacks can click, and you want Barrett in that line, and you want Moanga linking up with Barrett, and then the All Blacks with two distributors is a new, very fun look.
You're going to just name all those names, and then after all that deception and all that worry, it'll be Goodhue who goes in for the try.
Well, yeah, of course.
An unwatched Goodhue, because Sonny Bill's been man-marked by three men.
Yeah, of course.
Which is what their system commands. That's what ideally is happening. Is Sonny Bill getting double-teamed, but then somehow getting the hand free, and then it is Goodhue who's going in for the try.
It looks and feels a lot more All Blacks this week, and makes me just so excited.
I'd like to see them, because it felt like last week we didn't really see the All Blacks. We saw a New Zealand team go out and get the job done in Buenos Aires, but it doesn't quite feel like we've seen the All Blacks. Not quite yet. And this is them back on home turf against the old enemy in South Africa, the old big rival and challenge. And the Springboks are finally living up to that, because they've naming a B team to whoop the Aussies, to save their A team to go to New Zealand and try and whoop them too. It was all such
a perfect plan, but I think this All Black selection is almost a one-up move from Hansen. Like, it's just this
only if they win it.
This quiet little coaching chess game. Now the Boks, like, against that team that are going to be so hungry and jaded, I just think that there's every chance that if the All Blacks are at all off the boil, that the All Blacks could go mental, and they could, start racking up the tries. If they win the collision zone themselves, anything could happen.
Sure.
So there's that factor into it as well. Just the last point is that the set piece, I think we've talked about offense and defense. In terms of the three set pieces, I can't see too much going wrong. I think the All Blacks have been pretty solid. The only thing I could see Kitsoff getting on top of Franks, maybe. That's the only real area where I see problems for either side.
And
and
line-out maybe could malfunction.
when Mbanambi
but
comes on for the Boks, their line-out gets weaker, and that'll be a factor. And then also, I would back the All Blacks at restart time, which can be crucial as well.
Can be crucial, yeah. I've seen, actually, under Rassie, I've seen 1 or 2 horrendous restart moments.
They're not as well drilled in that area.
Not as well. Actually, that's one area in which even Australia tend to get that more right than South Africa a little bit. They tend to be quite well drilled on those ones. But yeah, no, I'd say those are the only real factors. But ultimately, like, I'm talking 1 or 2 over a game, maybe. They're going to be mostly solid in that area.
The instinct isn't that the set piece is going to be determinative of the outcome.
No, unless someone like Brodie Retallick can make a habit of nicking lineouts or something, but that's like playmaking rather than losing.
Get Snyman on the pitch and solidify that.
Yeah.
Snyman's absence is still an interesting one.
That is,
Snyman and Lowe are great men to have on the bench, but both could have started, and we may be talking next week about, Foster's not showing up and the breakdown not going the way it should.
Well, you were making the point actually pre-podcast about last week. Etzebeth was reading the defensive line out really well and calling it, but like even though he was getting himself in the right area, which is what something Snyman does bring, the likes of Peter O'Mahony is great at it, Tipperick sometimes as well, Alan Wynne of course, but like getting in the right area and getting up and snaffling it, and he was getting in the right area, getting up, but he's just too heavy and doesn't have. Yeah,
it doesn't have quite the same spring.
In his step. He's just not quite getting there.
If you watch the lineouts from last week's game, it was gas because Etzebeth had a read on them all. He was doing a great job, and then the lifters can't lift him because he's so damn heavy, and he just doesn't have that leap. So every single lineout the Wallabies took was like a Wallaby up here and Etzebeth, his arm just reaching up, going, why can't I get high?
Yeah.
And so it's
if that happens again, Snyman could have been maybe the right
Snyman's
call.
a guy who can do that. He's springy.
Yeah, he absolutely is. He's got more of a leap on him than most for a big man. He's deceptive in that way, but he's also is just a big man. So even if he doesn't get the spring, he's more likely to be there to swat it back down.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's something that could come unstuck for them, because obviously like Etzebeth had a great performance last week, but he did have a lot of minutes last week as well. It could be taxing this week. You just don't know. There are a lot of variables.
Such a physical guy.
Yeah.
But to be thrown in around, I just think it's so exciting, and we have come to the moment of prediction time, which we hate doing because God, we don't know. I mean, these are incredible teams going at it, and it could go any way.
It's always it's hard to even take satisfaction when your prediction goes right, because it's just one of many predictions really. Like I can see the avenue for success, or I can see the sequence of events that lead to a 5-point win for the Springboks and an absolutely historic day, or I can see the sequence of events that leads to a 25-point win for the All Blacks and a bit of a head scratching where are we at now again day for Rassie. That could happen again.
I can see the Boks winning by lots as well, and I also see the All Blacks winning a tight one. I mean, it's going to be an extraordinary game. It's going to be beautiful. It's going to be physical.
Probably going to be the highlight of the tournament so far, and maybe the tournament overall.
I don't know that the Boks have won this damn tournament since 2009, a decade ago.
Yeah.
I can't think of a time that they've won it since then. I know they won it that year.
If someone wants to comment below if they have.
I don't think they have.
No, I don't know.
I really don't. So there's that, obviously, but it's so unimportant this year. Like this match has all kinds of subtext because of the World Cup game.
True.
That's going to be on the opening weekend. So anyway, I don't know what to say. Who's going to win? I'm going to go for South Africa. But I honestly, after seeing that All Black team, there's a huge part of me that thinks the All Blacks are going to show up and do it. But I just really rate the Boks. I think they have an exceptional squad. I think they're doing this in the right way, and I think that they could be too good for the All Blacks.
It could be a changing of the guard just at the right time, coming into World Cup time. Rassie doing it right.
Yeah.
I'm going to say New Zealand are going to win by 5.
I totally respect that. I totally respect that. It was the same. You wanted the Pumas to win last week.
I did. I was really rooting for it, and I was so close. I was like, oh no. Well. But yeah, no. I'm going to say the ABs at home, but I'm going to say it's going to be a class game. More to the point.
That's more to the point.
Yeah.
Definitely one to watch. That's at 8:35 a.m. Irish time in Wellington in New Zealand. Looking forward to it.
Yeah. I suppose we'll move on then.
We will.
All right, the next game.
Epic long segment.
Long segment on the ultimate game. But yeah, the next game is Wallabies Pumas. It's in Suncorp in Australia.
The Wallabies have a deceptively good record.
They do. Yeah, they're very hard to beat.
But they win there.
Yeah, they win there, which is the point. they're coming off an absolutely shocking showing in South Africa. Really, like they picked a team that was a new team, very new look for an Australia team. Where you have the two boys, like we were talking about, do you pick Karevi or Kurandrani? Who do you pick in the centres? Turns out both is the answer. But is it?
No Beale.
And no Beale on the pitch at all. Literally head scratching kind of decisions.
Yeah.
The back three, I've never seen. I can't remember the last time I've seen an Aussie back three that's so just
wasteful.
Well, not even wasteful, but just not dynamic at all. Like even the likes of Reece Hodge did better than the other two, but he's not a dynamic player. He's not like the kind of winger I associate with an Australia team.
How are Australia going to win when they have such a deficit up front?
Yeah.
And how the answer is with ruthless attacking play.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why, like you were talking about Adam Ashley Cooper, they could do a lot worse.
Yeah.
Get finishers in your wingers jerseys, because you need them to finish tries.
Mm-hmm.
And that Haylett Petty drop,
like
that's just, you're not even in the game, and then you get a break like that, and come on,
I know.
take it.
It's very un-Australian. Normally that is their modus operandi, is to be kind of not in a game, be getting a bullied for a little bit, but then go bang bang, try, and then you're back in the game. It's a very Aussie look to a thing, but they just looked impotent in their multi-phase and in their turnover, and
I think they were a little shocked after the season that the Brumbies have had, and that they've been quietly confident that their pack has been building something. And to be as thoroughly outclassed and outmuscled up front as they were by admittedly one of the best packs out there, but it was also a big team.
But it was a big pack, to be fair, and it was like, to be fair to them now, I like your man's name, what's his name at 6, hadn't seen him before, he ran in for a nearly try, very big man at 6, kind of like a least lock.
I'm not sure.
He actually did some good work. His name escapes me now. The one who I thought was the weak link, who we were saying was actually having a good season, but Rodda by the second half was really annoying me. Isaac Rodda. Like I thought. Not Coleman, fucking Rory Arnold thought he was up for the fight and was actually doing his part, getting stuck into what was a bruising Springbok pack. But I thought Rodda was soft in all the contexts, and the two props, both at scrum time and in the loose, were getting monstered in the contact.
It's just crazy. I know Scott Sia was injured and he's back this week, but it's just mental that however many years on, they still line out for a test match with straight faces and James Slipper and Kepu as their props. And it's like, this didn't work in 2013.
When they were bursting on the scene as youngsters, they were getting monstered by the most elite packs in the world.
And Beastem Tawira had the field day.
He looked awesome actually.
On Kepu, who's their guy, and he's just not the guy. And it's their pack is not elite at the moment, and they were thoroughly battered about the place. And they were.
It still draws like a crazy alarm bell, and I said it last week, I'm going to keep saying it. Skelton and Fardy are just waiting up in the Northern Hemisphere, and they are an instant fix to exactly all of that problem. Just chuck them in there with Rory Arnold and Skelton with Fardy at 6.
What a difference it
and
would
you're
make
suddenly
Eben Etzebeth is charging into the contact and Will Skelton hits him full on. That's goes backwards.
He might spill the ball.
Skelton is one of the most physical players in rugby right now. He's playing for a champion side. Vardy's playing for a champion side, and they're not going to go to the World Cup because I don't know.
Some kind of old rule that is really
some
feeling sillier.
Completely arbitrary rule.
Well, it's not entirely arbitrary, and I know New Zealand do the same, but New Zealand are producing players. That's the key to that. That rule only works and makes sense while you're producing players. And Australia are just scouring the earth trying to find any test level players, and there are two locks up north.
The reality is that they need for grassroots to work over there. They need a functioning Wallaby team, and this side isn't functioning.
No, it's hard to watch. Last week was hard to watch from an Aussie. It was great. I was loving the Springbok performance, but the Wallaby performance was worrying. I've not seen them be that bad, even in the last few years. And it was only when Beale came on he showed exactly what they need to be about in that try that he scored, that wonderful
try that with just a flick pass. And it's just like, there's a Wallaby. You know, why do they hate? I keep reading comments from guys giving out about Beale. And I'm like, he is your best player. He is your first name on the team sheet. He is going to make things happen. He's going to make tries from nothing. And that is exactly what you need to win games. And Marika Corey-Betty as well, who I'm happy to see back on the wing. I actually thought, to be fair to him, Samu Karevi, it was ridiculous that he was put in the position of second 5, partnered with Kurandrani. He's not a distributor. He wasn't going to be able to link up with the back 3 in any kind of real way, but every time he got the ball he made things happen.
He tried to, and he did shirk a few tackles and kind of got the hands free at one point. Yeah, no, he tried his best. I just thought the balance was so far from
Yeah.
on. And then Nick White as well, who had a fine game.
Totally.
But he's also slow and kicking, and their pack's going backwards anyway.
Yeah.
And it's just like you're having a tactical scrum half who's not going to whip it out with any kind of pace or vigour, and your pack's going backwards at a rate of knots.
Yeah.
And it's just
like
none of that
it's
makes
a
sense.
failure to understand how you're going to win games. You are not going to marshal your way around the Springbok pack, drive them forward, get a nice Brumbies maul try. Like there was a great moment early in the game when they got a maul going, and it was well formed, and it looked like one of those Brumbies mauls that was going to just trundle in as it inexplicably does in every Super Rugby game. And it's Test rugby, and it didn't happen. The Springboks just pushed them back with all of their heft and weight, and a combination of world-class players shut it down. And then the Wallabies didn't score because, of course,
they had nothing out wide. Like that little the back three was gibberish though. Like the naming of like none of them are dynamic barnstorming players, and they just had no link play, coupled with the two centres who didn't actually do anything wrong inherently, but it was just
I thought Kurandrani was too quiet. I thought Karevi was good.
Yeah, but he was one more out, and it was just like it wasn't getting that far. There was none of it functioned as a Wallaby attack should. Like they were very, very impotent throughout. Like even the try they ended up scoring, the first try, the Hela Petty one, which kept them kind of in the game, in with the sniff of the game. Yeah. But they still just weren't in the game. To watch it, you were just thinking they did very well to just about get that try, and it wasn't slick. No. And then the Springboks were showing slickness and speed to take it.
I also think the more bad news in generally speaking, and we'll get onto it, was Taniela Tupou's just ridiculous yellow card offence, which we'll get into. I have issues with how that's been covered and Cheika's comments and everything else. We'll talk about that in a moment, but I just thought that was an example of some evidence of Kyle Sinclair in the man.
A little bit, he
scary.
did go off. It was after the whistle, and he went off his feet direct with the shoulder to a grounded opponent. Like it was all wrong. In everything, in every sense. And they were talking to the ref, going like, "Oh, it was after the play, so is that mitigating?" And I'm like, "No, it's not mitigating. It's
aggravating.
That's much worse." Like I didn't understand the response, but then you're right. You were saying the Wallabies kind of just the response to that incident, blaming it, which is something that Wallaby side and Wallaby media are always want to do when they lose games, is like throw shade at the ref, and they're not alone in that. There are a lot of other teams that do it, but this instance
there aren't too many teams that do it.
Not at the same rate as the
I think
Wallabies.
There's a problem in Australian rugby with how it's being covered and how it's being talked about, and I don't think they realise it, and it especially pertains to foul play.
It does. Well, like
they don't understand the new laws. They're not reading about them. They're not they don't know that a shoulder if your arm is behind your shoulder. World Rugby released an informative video on high tackles and shoulder charges and the sanctions around that, and they're very, very clear.
They are.
And the way that they differentiate between a shoulder charge and a high tackle is whether your arm is ahead of your shoulder
or not.
And it wasn't in Taniela Tupou's case. It was a reckless shoulder charge. It was, as you say, after the whistle to a downed opponent. And there was outrage from, among others,
Phil Kearns,
Michael Cheika,
Rugby.com
after the game
/au or .au.
Yeah, rugby.com.au. All Australian media just talking
about it was a ridiculous decision.
Just talking about they have no idea what the law is. They have no interest in knowing. They're just sort of looking at it and going, it's a good hit.
It shouldn't be. That shouldn't be a yellow, but it is. It's arguably a red. And you're going either read the laws or stop commenting on it. But they always seem to find a way to take issue with a certain incident that way. But it's I remember watching a Super Rugby game, which it was a Waratahs game from earlier in the game. I can't recall who they were playing, but I think it was an Aussie derby. I think it was a derby game. So I was listening to the commentary for it, and there was one instance that stood out to me because Bernard Foley at one point went up for a high ball, and there was someone kind of pushed but went under him, while the defender went up for the high ball, and so he got his legs taken out from under him, flipped, and landed on his shoulder there and banged it, and it was like a hit while he was in the air, which in the Northern Hemisphere and in most other competitions would have had the refs and TMOs discussing, going, right, he's up, he's pushed in, is there a mitigating factor, he's come down on his head, blah, blah, blah. The coverage...
It's at least a yellow.
It's at least a yellow, maybe a red. Whereas the coverage and even the commentary wasn't even drawing attention to the fact that Foley had landed on his head.
Just some vague stuff about how it wasn't intentional, which nobody says any tackle ever is, and that it should just be play on. And they're just not reading the laws, even though their job is talking about rugby and understanding rugby.
True.
But that's also, in the case of Michael Cheika as well.
Cheika is the more salient point because he needs to focus on trying to get this team winning games, and if he's going to repeatedly call foul when a ref just officiates and dictates the level
by the
of the
law
ball.
of the game. By the law of the
it's
game,
not good. We've seen it with like Jordan Murphy's Leicester Tigers and Jordan Murphy's response to ridiculous hits being like, it's not fair, I think the game's gone soft, it's a bit of a harsh call, and then a sequence of events that leads to them finishing bottom of the Premiership, conceding a load of penalties for similar things. It's a toxic way, and it's going to snowball on you if you don't address it, because you're not actually looking at the problem, you're just making up a problem. Because what you're avoiding looking at then by focusing on that is the fact that your A team, such as it was, went out against a B team in South Africa and got whooped, and not only got whooped, like you were just nowhere near as good as them anywhere on the pitch. And that's the issue. Like, it's nothing to do with the hit. Although the card, yes, they got points during the sin binning time, but it's on you. Like
they're in danger of getting left behind by this sport. Like, they're talking like, well, if rugby goes this way, it's just going to die. And it's like, yeah, it will in Australia apparently. But they need to develop a grassroots. They need their commentators to be more informed because it is having an impact. Like, they need to develop a rudimentary understanding of the laws to start with, and they don't have that at the moment. And it's constant. Like, I'm sorry if the argument is, well, the game's gone soft, but I don't think that flinging your body shoulder first into a guy on the ground after the whistle is something the game needs to preserve. No,
it's not. It's something that is cardable.
When I watched it, I was watching it here with our sister, and she was saying, that's a red. I was saying, it wasn't actually to the head. I think you'll find that they're going to make this a yellow. They could call it aggravating factors because he was on the ground and it was so open and put it up to a red, but they'll probably just settle on a yellow. And that was the informed discussion that we were having based on the laws. Meanwhile, the guys who were getting paid to talk about it were talking gibberish.
Yes.
Well, thankfully we were watching the Bok commentary.
Bok commentary I had as well.
We didn't have what was likely a tantrum.
An eruption of some kind.
On Fox Sports Australia. And I'm sorry to go in on them, but it's been a constant theme of Australian rugby exclusively for the last number of years, where they're just talking nonsense on foul play. Their team is getting progressively worse. Their stadiums are getting progressively emptier,
and they're still complaining about the ref.
And they just. I think the media plays a factor in this, and I think they do a worse job than everybody else.
It's fair. Rant over though, tirade over, but it needed to be said because it did come up again. It reared its ugly head, and it did colour the reaction to that game, which was a great game for the Boks and all this. And I'm not having it. I'm not having it. Like it's wrong. But that being said, we're going to pivot to Argentina as well, who last week were so close to beating the All Blacks the first time ever, and it was like they so nearly deserved it. If Boffelli would have got in for another try, I would have liked it. The only question, taking Boffelli off, like I suspect maybe he was injured because he's out this week. But taking him up for Tuchel came in, and I was all for that.
I actually he looked great. I haven't seen him in forever. He looked beautiful again. He looked like the same silky man.
He is, but I'd like to see him and Boffelli on at the same time and see what can happen with those two. But it just didn't happen for them. They weren't quite clinical enough to get around what was a very resilient, stubborn All Black defence. And like even the nearly try in the corner, that was just a beautiful Bowden Barrett defensive play to snuff it out. There were very many moments of that where it could have gone, and it was only within 4 points, and Sanchez probably ruined that
well,
pass
this is the thing is that I had said last week that a lot was going to hinge on Sanchez and his distribution game, and it didn't. He kicked a lot. And I'm curious to see how they want to play the game, because it was very un-Jaguares, and there was a lot to like about it, especially defensively.
Yeah. Definitely.
Against admittedly a bit of a stuttering All Black attack.
Sure.
But they shut them down. They weren't physically beaten by them in any way.
No.
And I think Pablo Matera is an insatiable tackler, and he's not just constantly making tackles, he's constantly making dominant tackles. And he's a real number 6 is number 6. He's actually causing a lot of.
And to be fair to Lavanini gets stuck in tackle time as well. None of them are soft in that contact area, not like what the Wallabies were showing in that showing. They look up for that challenge. And depending on how travel goes or whatnot, we've seen the Jaguares go to Australia and tour there, whooping ass, taking names. You'd like to see something similar from Argentina.
Well, I'm just curious to see if they're going to attack a bit more, because they were kicking a lot last week, and they did end up getting a great Boffelli try from a kick. But outside of that, they weren't making a huge amount happen. Their pack was stepping up, but their back line
to be
weren't.
fair, the All Black defence, which was something we didn't actually say when talking about the All Blacks, but it's like Argentina did try that Jaguars thing of spin it, and then one of the centres tries and toe pokes it through. Tried that a few times, but it's just impossible against the All Blacks because Beauden Barrett's in the backfield and he's too quick. He was just, even when they found grass, it was Beauden getting there first and with enough time to gather and clear.
The instinct of their scrum halves, rather than to stay around the ruck, is to cover that wide space. So that particular style of going wide and then kicking it,
the All Blacks have that wrapped up all day long, which they did. It was the bomb that ended up deceiving them. But I'd like that particular avenue towards success is something that it pays them dividends against so many other defences. But the All Black setup is such that, and with Beauden, that Beauden Barrett factor is just something else. Like his speed is just shuts things down. That things that should work don't work when he's there. So the Aussies do not have a Beauden Barrett. So some of those probing, attacking kicks could work. It's a different lineup this time. They've opted to move, was it Mojano into the centre?
No, they're moving Maroney into the
centre.
And then they have a Rolls Royce of a back three, which I think might be their full back three. No, Imhoff was playing last World Cup. So it's Mojano in place of Imhoff. It was like a little upgrade on Imhoff, I'd go so far as to say. And then Cordero on the right wing, back. Beautiful player,
great player,
and Tuchel at fullback.
There's your Rolls Royce. Tuchel is a fine. He's their equivalent of Ben Smith because he's been there for how long, and he's just a silky operator.
And he's probably not quite at Buffelli's level. It's a shame to see Buffelli out, but he's got all the silky moves.
That's why I'd like to see him and Buffelli combine. I think they both have a head on them, and I think Tuchel could put Buffelli into some serious holes.
You might be right.
Yeah, but we won't see that this week. But Cordero back in an Argentinian jersey, that's great to see. He doesn't have to be behind that extra pack waiting all day long to see the ball. He's going to be flashed it quickly and go and run at that Aussie over there. He's surely soft.
So it's exciting. I'm optimistic that you're right, and that the Sanchez kicking was an object of just that game rather than any sort of tactical indication of how they're going to go about things generally. I would like to see more pace in their game than they showed last week. I would like to see it speedy. I'd like to see it wide. I'd like to see,
especially because the Aussies have gone for the same centre pairing again, which wasn't really the area in which was more telling in that game. But I still think there's a slight flaw with their pairing with those two centres, even though they're probably the two form centres. I think they're a bit too bludgeoning. And they're both a bit flat-footed on Z. So
with Beale at fullback, a lot of that's going to change
for sure.
It's like the Box. The Box can afford not to pick a distributor in the centre, to pick two big centres because they have Willy LaRue. And Beale coming in there, I think Beale. I was saying
he'll improve them, no doubt.
I was saying I would have preferred him in the centre generally, but such was the mess that their back three was at, that became the priority that needed fixing. And I think with Corabetti and Beale, you might see that fixed. In at least some sense. It's a much stronger selection.
It looks a much better back line from Czech at least, because with Beale there as a fulcrum, it means it gives them that option and takes the pressure off Foley a little bit.
Foley's gone.
Lelefano's in there, but it takes pressure off him, which you need to, because he doesn't cope too well with too much. But Genia as well, a bit of speed to try and facilitate. Playing a bit of ball.
I think both sides need to play with speed. I think both sides need to test each other. And I'm curious to see what both defences look like. I think the Argentinian defence and the Argentinian pack is greatly improved. The Argentinian scrum is still a bit ropey, and actually Scotty Seal might fancy it if he's feeling great against Figallo, but that remains to be seen. I think both sides should play strong attacking rugby. I think I'm leaning towards Argentina just because I think that their
home advantage rules,
think their defense,
Suncorp record and all that.
I think their defense and their pack are just a little bit stronger than what the Wallabies have going on right now. That said, it is a much improved selection from the Wallabies. It's great to see Beale in there.
It's their first home game. Pressure's on. It's backs to the wall.
I've always been saying that if it's not going to be Quade Cooper, it should be Bernard Foley, because he's probably the best of what they have. But he was impotent last week. I mean, the Box put a bit of rush on him and he just left the game.
But he had no options, though. If he was there with Beale, suddenly he has an option.
I hear you, but unable to make anything
I
happen
know,
because he's just not that physical presence. So they're throwing Leilofano in there, who at least has a bit of footwork to him.
True.
But I actually don't disapprove of the call. I think it's time to give someone else a shot because Bernard isn't setting the house on fire.
No, he's just coming up second every game. Like he's a fine player, but he's going up against Andre Pollard or someone. Or in the last week it was Yankees. And Yankees were pulling the strings. It was not White and Foley. And similarly, like he's normally lining up against Bowden Barrett or someone like that, or even Sanchez this week could be troublesome. But we'll see how Leilofano goes. I do want to see a bit more potency from the Wallabies out wide.
I think you will see it. I think Kurabetti
they'll just have more of a clue of what they're doing because it was so clueless last week and slow that it was very un-Australian. Yeah. Whereas this week I think they will be coming and trying to grab tries.
Beale gives them direction, Beale hunts for tries, Beale finds space, and Kurabetti is an actual finisher on the wing. He's a finisher's finisher, and it's great to see him in there because last week was a bit of a mess. Still no sign of Adam Ashley Cooper, who I think you would like to see.
I would like to see in there. I think it would balance them to have him at 13 more, like a pick one of Karevi and Kirk. Yeah, like
you could put Reece Hodge at 13.
You could put Reece Hodge at 13, but I would actually, I don't know, I prefer Adam Ashley Cooper because I think he's a wily distributor. Like I think he's got a good, sensible passing game.
He finds tries.
Yeah, but he's more than that. He's more, and in his later years, he's kind of gone through a Bodish arc of kind of reinventing himself a little bit and coming back as a slightly different player. But I rate his nous, and I just think if it doesn't work this week, the centres will probably be why. Is my little thesis on it, because I think they're a bit clunky and direct, and considering Australia's where you got your 10 and 12 both being kind of 10s, the fact that that's so removed from that
it's 10 and 15,
which is more aligned with what the rest of the world is up to, but it's slightly
except for
different.
Ireland, they don't allow it.
No, 110, 110 and 19.
Yeah,
and that is all. But it'd be curious to see how it goes this week. I expect it to be a bit faster. I'm wondering to see who wins the physical battle, because obviously Suncorp will be loud. There'll be the other mitigating factors, things like travel. But I'm curious to see if Lavanini runs into Rory Arnold, who's going to win that. You know?
Yeah, it's a good point. Mike, this is why I've been leaning towards Argentina. Is that fact? What I will say is that Australia do have a good record when their backs are to the wall, and their backs are to the wall, because if they lose this game, they're heading into a 2-match Bledisloe series off the back of 2 defeats.
Close to disaster. It's close to not winning a game this side of the World Cup and having to go and face Fiji and be like,
I mean, it's exactly that. So I mean, I think this is a big game for them. I think Czechia understands that. I think they have made a better selection. And it's curious. I don't know. Maybe it'll be a mad yellow card that decides it. It
could be,
from Lavanini,
or from Sekope Kepu or something, and then we'll have more Aussie tantrums from it.
Indeed.
Swinging arm to the face. Clothesline punch. A couple of punches when he's down.
Then a kick. Listen, I am sorry about that rant in the middle of it, but I just felt like it needed to be said.
It's come up a few times. It happens a few times in Super Rugby as well. You're right on it. It's only the Aussies really that zero in on it so much, where it's a game that they lost outright, and the only thing they seem compelled to talk about is the one incident that was foul play, and they're just crying.
It's just not doing the work to know the laws and then bitching about them, and it's actually like you're bitching because you don't understand, because you haven't read up on it.
Yeah, but more than the bitching, what annoys me is that I want the Aussies to improve and get better, and I really like Czech, and we're Leinster fans. We have a lot of time for Czech. I want him to get this right somehow, and the fact that you're drawing in on the ref when you're after going to South Africa facing a weakened South Africa team and getting outclassed across the park, whooped from minute 1 to the 80th, and the only thing you're focusing on now is that the ref done you in. Yeah, and it's like that's never going to solve the problem.
A decision that was made more or less after the game was over.
Yeah,
it could easily have been a red card. Yeah, but there you go.
We digress on it, but it's a point that should have been made. But anyway, for this week, I don't know. Prediction wise, I'm hoping for the Pumas to do it. But I can see the Wallabies kind of coming out of nowhere with a spoiling performance.
I definitely can see that too.
Yeah.
Or just finding tries. I'd like to see
what I want to see is a pacey game from both. I want to see both kind of stick to their attacking roots and try and get some plays off against each other, because that's what they're both in it for. Exactly. And like if they're to have success against other teams in the World Cup, it's going to be with their attack. So go with that in mind.
Totally, and that's sort of where my Argentina prediction came from, where I was just thinking if both sides play to their attacking potential, I see Argentina as more competently able to defend that than maybe Australia right now. But the factor of who's going to show up and who's going to be that bit more aggressive, and Australia do have more at stake. I know Argentina would be at 2 defeats as well, but it's just not quite the same. They put it up to the All Blacks at home. They have the Jaguares.
Their performance last week was nothing as shameful as what the Aussies were putting in. You know, like they were nearly there, and everyone was by the final whistle. It was disappointing, but it was a good showing.
Yeah.
Whereas the same can't be said for what Australia brought last week,
No.
and now it's their first home game of the season. They're going to want to put a showing in. They're going to be there for the hits, at least in the first half. It's whether, and then the other thing is travel again. It's always a thing that happens with Australia. Like the Argentinians are now travelling from Buenos Aires to Australia.
Yeah.
It's a week turnaround. Is the same physicality going to be there? Because it was a very bruising game. Because neither of them were that impotent, they were hitting each other a lot against the All Blacks. So
the Wallabies have had to go across the Indian Ocean
themselves. True. I know. Yeah, it's a huge factor in the Rugby Championship and in Super Rugby that does affect certain
especially
performances.
this condensed tournament. That's why the Boks did what they did.
Yeah, exactly. Send some people over to avoid that, and it becomes a factor in your tactics.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering what kind of Argentina we see. I'm hoping we see an all guns blazing, really up for it Argentina, and I'm kind of hoping, justice wise, that they win it by 5 or 10, because I think that would be the just thing to have happen, because I think they're progressing more than Australia are, who are regressing a bit. Yeah. But I can kind of see it clicking for Australia and maybe them getting the 10-point win.
That'd be nice. You know, there's no personal bias against Australia. No. It's just sheer frustration at a lot of what's going on there. But absolutely, if they can put it together and play the attacking footy that we know that they're capable of.
And Curtly Beale's putting people in
Beale
space.
at the centre of it all, because he is their best.
I love watching that guy play.
Australian fans, he is your best player. Cherish him when Pocock's not around.
That's right, actually. Yeah. Pocock actually is even more important, because their pack gets bullied so often, and it's just nice to have a Pocock in there. We haven't
mentioned it. I've just been sort of par for coursing that the Argentinian pack is stronger. Michael Hooper could do a lot more.
Yeah,
he was absent last week.
He was outworked by Marcel, or not by Marcel, by
Peter Steff was opposite him, and there was Elstad, and then there was Francois Lowe.
It was Francois Lowe who was doing his job better than him. Get stuck in. He's due for a big one, but this is what could happen back in Suncorp. You know, Michael Hooper suddenly making play after play, and then suddenly Beale's hands are on the ball off turnover. It could be an exciting game. I hope it's a pacey one.
I hope it is.
I think it's probably going to be the faster of the two games in terms of tempo.
I would love to see it. I would be disappointed to see either side not play attacking footy.
Or if it's kick tennis or something, you know, what's going on.
Boys, this isn't prep for the World Cup. This is nonsense.
Yes.
So let's go.
Let's get it going. Is exactly the puck call. So I'm not going to call. I'm going to say probably Australia.
Right. Well, then in traditional theme of the podcast, I'm going to say Argentina.
Fair enough. And let's go. And I'm still rooting for Argentina, because they're just my adopted. I kind of want them to want them to win the Grand Slam at some point.
You went against Argentina, and I went against South Africa. No, I didn't. I went for South Africa.
You went for South Africa.
I can never go against South
Africa.
No,
you can't. Your heart bigger than the head on that one. But yeah, so we're going to look forward to that game. I'm suspecting that a bit of Aussie backlash. They're not dead yet, and they still have both to fire this side of the World Cup and in the World Cup.
Yeah,
hopefully.
I hope you're right. You're right.
But with that we'll move on from the Rugby Championship, next we have to chat Pacific Nations Cup, which is getting underway.
We surely do.
And what a great tournament this is. We were saying a few weeks back that it was all taking place in Suva, but I actually think that's not the case, because Fiji are travelling to Japan this week.
I had read that, and the Samoa Tonga is in Apia as well. And
right.
The USA game is in Denver. There are some games that unless it was an error that I read. I thought I read that there was a game between like Samoa and USA that was happening in Suva.
It would be cool,
but I guess that's not the case.
Right.
So the headliner, obviously, of this week's tournament that's kicking it off is our first look at the hosts of the tournament, Japan. Very excited about seeing these guys. They always bring a lot of industry to the shape.
A lot of speed.
A lot of shape.
Yeah.
They tend to be very, very structured.
Technique as well. Yeah. Like, even though they're not the biggest pack, they tend to be the lowest.
They tend to be extremely well drilled. They have a load of first phase set piece moves in their locker. They have a very solid scrum and line out and maul. They can kick. Like, they tend to just they've researched the fundamentals of the game and drilled it into them.
Yeah.
And very often they are not an error making team.
Yeah.
They play solid footy.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to see them.
Back at home as well as a good curtain raiser against the real kind of content. Like, they're the team to be beaten in this tournament are Fiji. To be honest, it feels like this tournament is kind of all Fiji's for the taking, unless someone can take it from them.
3 years on the bench.
Yeah.
They're doing Georgian-esque things to this competition.
They're a few leagues ahead of everything else in this competition. But I think this
Japan is the closest.
Yeah, and Japan traveling to Japan on week 1 of it is their most challenging fixture of this tournament by far. Yeah. And it's coming off a loss last week to the Maori,
that's right.
But not a terrible one in many ways. Like, they showed some things, and it was they let rest a load of players, and they were close.
Aggregate victory on the series.
Aggregate victory
with rested players. I think they'll take that.
You'll never get away with any of that down there in that neck of the woods.
It's a 1-1 series.
It's a 1-1 series. There's no aggregate. Because didn't New Zealand do an aggregate series a few years ago, and then Richie McCaw was talking about it was gibberish.
It's in his book, and I remember the story. It was a series against the French, and it was in that era post World Cup of 07. There he is. It was in that era post World Cup in 2007. When they had obviously lost in the World Cup. I think they lost to the Boks in a series. I think it might have been 2009 actually when they had, or maybe the year after when they had lost that World Cup world number 1 spot to the Boks. They lost the Rugby Championship to the Boks, and then they lost that series against France. And it was on aggregate that they lost it, and Richie McCaw was fuming because he's a rugby traditionalist and the series was tied, and if it's a tied it's retained. And we had this shield, and someone invented this damned
aggregate system. Well, it comes from all other sports, but it's funny to hear Richie's ire. But no, there was no aggregate. This was a traditional one, and they won one in Suva. They lost in Rotorua. To be fair, the Maori did have that backlash, and just put them a bit to the side. They were more physical than them for the most part.
And they were missing the guys that they left out. And that was telling.
And to be fair, your man, blue scrum cap, is missing again.
Vaitakani.
Wasn't quite the same for us at 10. He's back at 15 this week for the Japan game. Excellent news. Actually, the team they've named is great.
It's very similar to that first side that played the Maori. Naya Salevu and Botti in the centre have a really good celebrity. Quietly, Lamani and Vola Vola are as good a halfback pairing as you've seen them have. They're actually halfbacks. And Fiji often just have a load outside of backs everywhere.
Yeah,
from 6 to 15, they're all outside backs. But actually, Lamani and Vola Vola are halfbacks.
Yeah, and for sure. They try and dictate the game. They try and move them around the pitch. And they're a more mature side. And Botia actually in the centre is such a really good defender. He's a very, very tidy defender. He shuts things down. He reads on the play. We had a comment on it as well. Like that first performance in Suva, he was crucial to shutting down a lot of what the Maori were bringing. And there'll be a task on hand for him as well, because like you're saying with Japan, they bring a lot of interesting set piece pictures.
It's all a difficult for what Fiji have been doing. Like, Japan is a very unique defensive challenge. They come at you from all angles. They
flood several flood one channel with several players.
They throw surprising shapes at you. They will execute a 3-on-2 if you leave it there for them.
True.
They'll find it and they'll execute it. I remember seeing them in Twickenham a few years back against England. It was after Eddie Jones had said something snide, and I think they were
That was last year, wasn't it?
I'm not sure when it was.
It was just after the All Black performance, wasn't it? And they were saying they were going to put. They were going to put 50
was that
on
last? Was that
I think
last
it was,
November?
because Kyle Sinkner was coming out talking all kinds of nonsense, going like, you wouldn't be asking the All Blacks to take it. The All Blacks would put 50 on Japan. We'll do the same, blah, blah, blah. And then Japan were winning the game up until up until around 60 minutes. They were winning the game and looking better. But then the fatigue kind of told, and the dam burst, and England ran in a few tries and got a comfortable enough looking win. But they know in their heart of hearts it wasn't that comfortable. Japan were asking them questions and making them feel a bit silly for not taking them as seriously as maybe they ought to have.
And totally. And you could see similar things. But one of the key things from that match was just their ability to, in no space on the blind side, we have 3 men, you have 2, a la old school Toulouse. They were just fix and give, and get it to the winger, and they were gone.
Yeah.
And they were looking for offloads, and they're always looking to find that space.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a handful for Fiji to handle.
Yeah, for sure.
Definitely a great test for John McKee's defence.
For sure. And the likes of Nakarawa, the pack need to be mobile and shutting things down. They also need to be physically dominant. Fiji need to exert physical dominance on this Japan side, because that is how you break the Japan side. Is with raw physicality.
I almost think they're more likely to show that physical dominance in the backline than the pack.
Probably man for man.
Outmuscle their backline. And I think you could see that, or even in the wide channels with forwards like Vilmata, loose forwards.
Yeah.
But like Japan, like their pack is so well drilled that they will get stuck in at the breakdown. They will definitely have the edge on the scrum, because the Fijian scrum is a bit of a mess.
It's a bit of a mess, and Japan's is very technical.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, it's true. Set piece, and I'm wondering who's striking off line out very well. What's the Japan maul going to be like? Are they going to bring that? That being said, Fiji scrum is a bit of a mess, but they did maul or scrum the Maori back over the line in that last game in Rotorua, which was progress actually, even from the week before. It was good to be able to walk over, and it was controlled at the base, and it wasn't even a penalty try. He walked it to the 5 metres over the line and then grounded it, that's very much improvement. You don't normally see that from a Fiji team. It was a very Georgian looking try. So there's improvement all over. Like John McKee's just doing a very savvy job.
Thorough job.
He's building. He's trying to fill in the gaps, because he knows he already has such a winning ticket there already, that it's just a different task of ironing out a few habits.
Who would have seen this sort of success, like back when Tuisova and Radradra were just at the heart of that team that won in Paris, and are such, especially over in Europe, they're such well-known superstars, and they are not in this side, and
this side
still it's
awesome.
Very dangerous. Great to see, by the way, Patrick Osborne, who has always been just one of my favourite players quietly. But I remember him for the Highlanders. He won Super Rugby with them years ago.
Playing next to Ben Smith. And
Ben Smith and Waisaki Naholo and Patrick Osborne, and he was well worth his place in that back three. He's a fun player.
He's a classy player.
Glad to see him back.
Yeah.
For Japan, their squad generally, like we have a decent idea of what shape their squad takes, but just not as familiar with the personnel, because
a lot of them play in Japan.
A lot of them play in the Japanese league.
I know Luke Thompson, seen him a few times internationally.
Obviously
know Mafi from the last World Cup at number 8.
Amanaki Mafi. There's a couple of guys to watch, and he's won. He was great at the last World Cup. Matsushima, obviously, in the wing, has been there forever. At the other wing, Fukuoka is one of the Sevens guys. Great to see Sevens guys getting in there. So there's that excitement to it as well. But generally speaking, I'm just excited to take a look at them. They're obviously in Ireland's group, so there's vested interest there.
100%. I was going to say that. Yeah, we have to cast a little critical eye as to what's coming up, as I'm sure most nations are doing. That's another factor in the Pacific Nations Cup. Everyone has their little bogey teams, so it's a good reason to watch it too.
You know what? As well, it's getting covered this year by mainstream rugby press, because
World Cup here. It's World Cup hype is exactly what it is, and no better kind of curtain raiser. Is it actually the first test of the?
It's not actually. It's the second, but it's just the main one. So
yes, it is, and it's the main one of the tournament, to be honest. Because I think the winner of this is probably my favourite to go on and win the tournament.
100%.
Yeah,
100%. The US could slip one of them up, maybe. But
US are physical enough. But the US are playing Canada as well. That's the last one?
That's the last one.
The first one is Tonga Samoa, the Islander clash.
Yeah,
going to be great. As you said off camera, you were saying that there's a possibility, because both teams want to play kind of like Fiji, that it could end up just not being that slick and end up with a lot of scrums and be quite stop-start. But alternatively, some big hits, some big collisions, big kind of passing plays, sequences of very loose but also very exciting play.
I'm not 100% convinced or sure about either of these sides, to be honest with you.
You were saying Georgia would beat both, is what your comment was, and you're probably right. Well,
Georgia have last year. They beat both, and that was it was just by marauding them and beating them. And listen, it's great to see Nasi Manu back. I think is one of the key points, captaining Tonga
back from testicular
cancer.
That's great. Welcome back to the game. That's awesome news.
And he's a great player, and they have some great players both sides. Tim Nanai-Williams unfortunately not available this week.
That is unfortunate. That's a lot of Samoa's fulcrum is that boy.
A whole lot of it. And I just, from a World Cup perspective, in terms of one of these teams causing a shock, it's significantly less likely than one of Fiji or Japan.
Yes.
Which makes it and this is sort of just in the context of the tournament and the World Cup, it just makes this game a little less interesting, and I think probably the they probably will be the least viewed game of the three of them.
Probably, yes.
And
right, like kind of rightly so for those reasons you outlined. They're fair. Like, to be honest, just go across here. Sorry, where are you going? Yeah. For the Tonga side,
I just get it open there.
Yeah. So you have who's it you were saying is back?
Rassie
Manu as captaining. It's awesome.
Side,
Well, that should spur them on a little bit, to be honest.
Yeah.
But similarly, like Mosia at
Lausie as well as a guy who's pretty damn useful as well.
And he's coming in from 23. Jeez, yeah. No, to be honest, they're all big boys, is what I associate with them. Like Leva Fafita, we know, huge man. Tamafuna,
Big Ben Tamafuna, who has once upon a year was in the All Black squad. He's a Racing man, I think, still. But
unit as well. They're also big. The Tongans as well as it's really, really fun to watch them play the game.
A physical game. Hopefully, it's very much first game of the season buzz with these two. I'm not sure what either of them are going to look like. Based on last year, not at all convinced that either of them are going to put anything for this tournament real together. But
they're trying to work out their combinations for the World Cup. They're in the same boat as everyone else.
Indeed, but curious to see what both sides look like. Generally speaking, these games tend to be quite frantic, somewhat physical. You do get the big hits, but also just quite a few scrums, quite a bit stop-start, and just not quite at the level that we're seeing from the likes of Fiji at the moment.
Sure.
And that's my cold hard take on the matter, I think.
Fair.
But it comes from a place of general ignorance, just because we haven't seen
too many of them play, and not even
such
that many of the
semblance and an amalgamation of talent that goes on with those Pacific Island sides that you never quite know what to expect when they come together. And so it's going to be an educating game to watch. And obviously it's at 3 a.m. on Saturday. I won't be able to watch it live, but I will get to watch the full game at some point. I believe World Rugby are streaming them, which is good of them.
That is, and then the last game of the tournament.
Of the weekend.
Of the weekend is the old and another derby of sorts. USA Canada.
It's a derby. It's up in Denver at altitude.
Yes, it is at altitude in the Mile High Stadium thing, the Infinity Stadium or Infinity Park even in Denver. And that's the last game of the weekend. So there may be a fair few kicks on the full, which is always the way in altitude kind of game. But for sure, I'm suspecting that Australia or that the US are coming into this as the stronger of the two, just because they've kind of had a decent run of form in the last. Obviously they're missing their great hooker Joe Tafatea, who scores all their tries, but they seem to be coming from a more positive ebb than Canada, who have just kind of been relatively in free fall for the last few years.
Since the last World Cup they have not been at the level they took as long as they've ever taken to qualify for the World Cup. They did it at the repechage last year, and the US by contrast adding layers and adding structures. There's huge value though from Major League Rugby that I'm hoping to see seep into both of these sides. I think about half of the Canadian squad overall comes from Major League Rugby, and I think just about that, maybe slightly just under that in the US squad. And there's 7 starters on the US team who are playing Major League Rugby.
That's great.
Which just means professional contracts throughout the squads.
It's really positive progress. That's
awesome
World Rugby's targeting getting the US big into this game.
Yeah.
That's step 1 straight away covered. They're playing domestic professional rugby. The whole team's professional. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I think there's only one man. Blaine Scully is unattached officially, but he's a Sarri.
We know Blaine Scully.
He's not. He's unattached because no one's forked out the money for them, but they will.
A couple of 7th guys in there as well. Interestingly, Yosefo on the left wing and Madison Hughes, who I'm a huge fan of.
Actually, I like Yosefo as well. They're 2 of my favourite because obviously, the US are so primed for 7s with their sprinters on the wing. But what's been interesting in the last few years is how they've developed the other players who aren't either Carl Niles or Perry Baker, but the other guys who are doing the more industrious work. And at that, Yosefo and Hughes are both very technical, look like union players. They're very rugby brains on them, and they're thinking about the game, and they're good at breakdown technique, kicking of a ball. They have a lot of good useful tools that'll add a lot to this Eagles side. And it's
to have Yosefo on one wing and Blaine Scully on the other, Madison Hughes to come off the bench. You're just adding layers to what is a very good base with a very good driving maul.
Big pack. physical pack.
Very, very
They
good
were
pack.
in there. Sure, they played Ireland in the Viva. We were watching it
We
last
were looking
year.
at them going, there isn't that big a physical difference.
No,
here.
there isn't. And Ireland are big, like,
Yeah.
and you're going, yeah.
Obviously, Joe Tefete was massive in that. I actually don't know
Don't know
where
where
he is
he's
this
at.
week.
Yeah, no,
I know I was following him on Twitter and I saw that he was saying he was in Denver, but obviously
It's actually Dylan Fawcett getting the nod of Rugby United New York, and then on the bench they have Pifilete from
There you
San Diego,
go,
from the
Pifilete.
Legion. But yeah, two Major League Rugby boys in there.
That's awesome.
Which is
That's
depth
awesome.
now.
But
So
depth indeed. But they will lack for that Tefete. But that's a generally very sharp maul, very sharp at set piece, strong defence, physical side, and just growing more layers, more professionalism. Aj McGinty at 10, becoming a stalwart.
he
like
is.
a lot
He's a veteran for that team.
a load of experience.
Yeah,
Comes from the iconic rugby city of Dublin.
he does at this point. Yeah,
From those roots.
he does. Yeah,
and
which school was he? He was in.
I think he might have been Blackrock.
Was he
No, he
Blackrock?
wasn't.
No.
He wasn't. But he was He was a dub, is all I know.
Yeah.
But
yeah, no, he's been great for them. Obviously, like, he's a proper little 10. Kicks his tactical kicks
goes to
occasionally.
show.
Moves them around a bit.
He's sales starting.
He is.
10. He plays with Faf every week.
Yeah, I'd say that's been fun for him.
Yeah.
You have Faf come in the door, and it's
Definitely
like
helps
suddenly
as
I
a
have
10.
much better service. Yeah.
I'm
So
always getting it when the defence is already frantic because Faf is.
But he's coming off like Sale have definitely had a pretty solid, positive
and
season.
he's been solid and positive. He's been a part of that as well. So my instinct tells me that if
The US had too
logic
much.
dictates that the US have been the better side.
It's in San Diego. Or it's in
Denver.
Denver even. I think it's all stacked up against Canada. Canada, as best I can tell, are bringing a DTH man Van der Merwe to the party and very little else. Like, I'm not impressed with too much. Like, Jeff Hassler's a good player, solid operator too.
Seattle Seawolf.
He is a Seattle
Major
Seawolf.
League rugby winner. He has a gold medal.
He does. But there's just significant gaps in their pack and throughout that it wasn't always there. They're a weaker side than, like, they haven't replaced Cudmore and Hines. Hines. Cudmore. Who was their partner in there?
Lowndes, or I can't remember his name.
Yeah, big, huge dude. They were very, very physical in years gone by, and they were a tough side to play.
Yeah,
this side is
not
bit
quite
nowhere
so,
near.
They tend to be more brittle.
A little bit more, like, just certainly soft in contact a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm curious to see how they come up for this game. It's obviously the first game of the season. I'm going off historical precedent on that, but it has been. The trend has been a dip rather than a rise for Canada, and I'd be hopeful.
But that's
that they
it.
can
Major
top
League
up.
Rugby, like the Toronto Arrows being a professional franchise, that is likely to mitigate some of the free fall that we've seen.
Yeah, at least let it bottom out, and so we can start to climb back up.
But even for this game, I just think the US have had their up and down moments.
Oh yeah, they
weren't
had some poor performances.
They weren't as strong in the America's Rugby Championship this year as they were last year throughout their season.
They were struggling with the likes of Uruguay, I think, and
Uruguay were causing them problems.
Yeah.
Argentina 15, I think, caused them problems. I think they lost both of those games.
Yeah. The team that didn't cause them problems was Canada.
Yeah,
so that's a factor in this game.
Well, indeed, and the Canadian. I don't know that Canada can even genuinely have a focus on this coming World Cup, and that their whole thing needs to be building using Major League Rugby as
to build towards next World Cup. Really, is where they're at now, and like they have such a base and such a tradition there that is doable.
Totally,
100%. But they'll be wanting from this World Cup to do their darndest to secure that coveted third place in the group. It may be a bridge too far for them, but they want to be nicking at least one game against someone and getting themselves qualified.
Always a priority,
because that's all they can kind of hope for, and it would book a negative trend and have them set on the right course. But I don't think that's on the focus for this game, and I think they're going to be slightly outmatched and maybe lose by 10. Is my thought.
I think that's fair. I think they could lose by more.
They could.
On first game of the season, there are so many variables.
It's true,
and it's very much just a week from a commentary point of view, just about learning.
Definitely,
and
it's figuring out combinations, figuring out how to go forward with this comp, but mainly with an eye towards the World Cup, which is where it's the same with the Rugby Championship. Everyone's that way. It's all kind of. Yes, we'd like to win this game. Obviously, we'd like to win this tournament we're in even better. but we're still really focused on the World Cup, which is where all of our heads are at.
And I'm interested in just seeing what a lot of these teams look like. We don't have the luxury of seeing these tier 2 teams certainly
very
playing together
often.
as often, so we don't know them as well.
That's why the Pacific Nations Cup is just a great tournament.
Wonderful tournament.
Great tournament.
Wonderful tournament.
It's getting underway. And we're looking forward to watching it. Yeah.
Totally. Absolutely.
But yeah, with that, we'll move on, I suppose, then to our last segment, will we? Or yeah. So our final segment of the week is Rugby News of the Week, as it is every week.
Indeed.
And yeah, this week we have a few ones, because we were a bit late getting to the podcast shoot, where this is Thursday night as we're shooting it.
And
so
the last time we shot was Monday.
So we have a few little headlines that were just from last week that we didn't get to talk to. But the one we're going to open with is something that came out this week, which is that Big Joe Tekori, awesome player, awesome season for Toulouse, has spontaneously, apropos of nothing apparently, decided to retire a month or two out from the World Cup and will not therefore be representing he's Samoan, which is Samoa could use a Big Joe Tekori, to be honest. Like
it's a huge loss for Samoa.
Yeah, it's literally and figuratively huge. Like
it's catastrophic.
It's also a big black mark against Toulouse, but it's not just Toulouse. It's a big thing going on in France. They are arming Islander players into not playing for their country. Yeah, that's what they're doing. You can smell a rat here.
Yeah, none of this is surprising. We saw it earlier in the year with Fiji and Nadolo and Nagusa, who, add them to that squad right now. Holy Moses.
Yeah.
But yeah, they were banned essentially. Well, listen, we can't say that, but we can say...
Can't say that, nothing's been proven, nothing's been, this is all just going off logic, which is exactly what's happening.
We had a report that was leaked that came out because the Samoan and Tongan coaches respectively said that their players had told them in confidence, without naming players, that their clubs had been strong arming them not to play. And simultaneously now we have a third case of a player retiring before, a player who would have made the squad, who would be playing in a World Cup.
He'd be one of the first names on the team sheet.
Starting in a World Cup first fixture,
for
guaranteed, retires in the year of a World Cup, which is insane. This is the showcase event. Even monetarily, it's the showcase event.
I kind of want World Rugby to step in with something. I just don't know what, or what the recourse is.
They have a law against it, but the whole thing is that they can't prove it. But this is not good enough. I mean, this is very obviously not what it is on its face.
Yeah,
the idea that Nemani Nadolo just doesn't want to play for Fiji anymore, and Nagusa the same, and now Joe Tekori just doesn't want to play for Samoa anymore. That he just he couldn't possibly leave his Montpellier team or his Toulouse team to go to the World Rugby showcase event and represent his country. No, he just really wants to play his club footy and settle down on that. And then they have to
give me a break with that.
Put out these Instagram posts and everything else, and there's no judgment with the blokes involved, because they're in this awkward financial situation where they are being strong-armed.
It's the hand that feeds you. You don't bite it, and it's just the fact that the French clubs would go that way, and of course they would. They always are the Eleanor and FF4 being at odds with so many of these things, and the way they conduct themselves, it's all going to be self-serving. So if they can, if there's a team in the top tours that has 10 starters who are from the Islanders or from the South Sea Islands, and they feel they can financially kind of hold them to duress, you feel they will. Yeah, they'll force them all to retire so they can spend that month playing in the top tours when no one's watching and no one cares, and the intensity is kind of off because all the World Cup players are gone anyway. And it's just crazy, chat. But they want to get a few wins on the books while the World Cup's going. Put them in a better place for later in the season.
When you consider what Joe Tekori did for Toulouse this year, he was a nuisance to every side that played Toulouse. He was a big part of why they won the Bouclier and why they got to a European semi-final. Big part.
And as reward,
it's so unethical, it's so immoral, it's so it's just unbelievably gross behaviour. And I know that we can't say that it's happening, but it is happening.
But it's affecting the World Cup.
It's affecting World Rugby. It's affecting the World Cup. It's affecting these guys, and it's why I jitter a little bit when I hear all the sort of finger wagging at the likes of Billy Vunipola for his comments, etc., is that like you on the one hand you can look at the comments, whatever, but on the other hand you have to acknowledge that the guys from the Pacific Islands are just being abused and used in such a gross way by the Europeans that feels like a throwback to, that it's something you don't want to see in rugby, because it feels like a throwback to, you know, exploitative colonialism. Like we're just going to take these guys, we're going to use them to make ourselves grander, and then shit on them and shit on their culture and not let them represent their country and not let them go to the World Cup. And it's just, it sickens you. It sickens you. You pay them a fair wage for doing the job for you, and you send them to the World Cup. You don't hold that money back for ransom to stop them from representing their country in the biggest tournament in the world. And it's just... And the other perverse thing that I find, even from a business point of view, is that their stock rises for being in the World Cup. Like, Montpellier would be better. They get more attendances at Nadolo's first game back from the World Cup, because he's just scored a worldie of a try in the World Cup or whatever, and he's on all the highlight reels, and now suddenly he's marquee in his box office. It's a great point, like, especially with a guy like Nadolo. You know, if he was at the World Cup, he'd be making headlines.
Exactly. So then he comes back to Montpellier, and suddenly it's a full attendance and a bit more eyeballs.
Everybody wants to see Nemanja.
Exactly. So it's actually, as well as being all the unethical for all the reasons you outlined, it's actually fundamentally stupid if you're being greedy about it. It's actually not even the way to do it. Anyway, so that's the point on that, and we do have points on that, but it's worth mentioning because it is a black really mark on a sport that we can be proud of, and there's inclusive elements all over, and I love the fair play aspect of it, love everything about the respectfulness of the ref. We just love this game to bits, and this is such a black mark that is recurring in World Cup year. It's just rearing its ugly head again and again, and I wouldn't say this will be the last. No, I think there's going to be another random retiree next week.
Every chance. So it's just it's depressing. It's a depressing thought, and it's depressing that consistently not enough is being done to support the South Sea Island nations in general. Be it financially, be it in general across the board. Like Fiji can't afford to pay their defence coach, so he'd have to let him go the year of the World Cup, as well as losing 2 stars to this retiring kind of wave of thing. It's all very punitive, and it feels like it's everything's slanting away from them, and just take no, the givers, that what was he said last week, the haves and the have-nots. And it's an unfortunate way to be. We need to be a bit more equitable about all of it. Agreed.
But anyway, another rant over. It's been a ranty enough one this week.
Well, listen, there's some sad news. There's 2 specific instances of very annoying sad news.
Will we get the other one? No, we're going to go to good news first before we do the sad news. Big Ian Henderson, Ulster captain for next year.
Yeah, Ian Henderson's been announced as the Ulster captain.
Congrats, Ian.
Taking over.
Very fair play. I think he's the natural successor.
Yeah, this is a good call.
He's a proper Ulsterman, proper player, physical presence.
You watch him on a rugby pitch, he leads them. He leads the pack. He's been the guy who's been stepping up and calling the lineouts when it's not his natural role. He's the guy who makes the plays. He's the guy who says, "Follow me." Yeah, that's your captain.
100%.
And I think it's a great call. I think he's got some massive boots to fill in Rory Best, obviously,
for sure.
But he's a huge player, as you say, literally and figuratively. Yeah. But I think he's going to flourish in the role.
He could really be the making of the man. Excited. Could be the making of that pack. I'll be curious to see how the dynamic of it is. Big Ian at captain, and still having Geordie and Marcel Tessier, and it's shaping up as a very tidy little pack. Fair play. Congrats, Ian Henderson. That was some good news.
Come back from the World Cup, be it happy or sad, and he'll go and captain Ulster. And there's life after the World Cup, and it involves Ian Henderson.
It does,
as captain of Ulster. Yes, happy days.
And then also Steve Mafi to London Irish.
Yeah, London Irish, just with another quiet little acquisition. I've always had
it's going to be a mad hodgepodge team.
It really is. I've always liked Steve Mafi. Ever since he played for the Western Force, he was always just. He had a good bit of hustle about him and still does.
Yes,
this is one of the better signings from London Irish.
He's going to make things happen. It's funny. It's funny. Waisakinaholo on the wing for them. What? It's going to be mental watching them next season. But Steve Mafi, another acquisition. They really are flashing out the cash.
They are.
Despite sponsors pulling from them. I don't know. The walls could cave in yet, but we'll see. Steve Mafi will definitely not hurt. And then what was the other news? Yes, actually we were mentioning the under-20s trophy that was on, which is the tier below the under-20s World Championship, and the winner, the carrot for it, is a right to play in the under-20s World Championship next year. The final of that took place and was an absolute worldie of a game. Japan and Portugal.
I watched it.
Finished 39-29.
30-29.
30-29.
Yeah.
To Japan.
Yeah.
Just.
And they were like 10 points down with 10 minutes to go. The Japanese, they found something. It was 29-20 actually, so they were 9 points down.
Right.
And they found that little extra gear.
Mm-hmm.
Having been outplayed, like Portugal were more structured. It was great to see Portugal back. They were played in a World Cup back in 2007. They do have some
rugby base.
Rugby base.
There's a place in Spain as well. Like the rugby's growing.
Spain is growing massively
at a bigger rate.
Portugal there behind them. Well, this is a good step for them, and they outplayed Japan for the majority of the game. Their backline had more structure. It was causing their defence more problems. Japan were a lot looser. And they were a lot more nervy, and they were a lot more knock-on-y, and there was less structure to what they were doing, which isn't like the Japanese.
No, but it can serve you when you're 10 points down. You can dig yourself out of a hole with some structure.
They also had a bigger and better scrum. But
helps a lot too.
The Portuguese, they gave it everything, and they just couldn't quite get over the line.
Short. It's so cruel when the difference is either being there or not there. It's unlucky.
I was so upset for them, and I was so ready to be upset for them having watched the game. But then as the Japanese, having just stolen at the death, were just going balubas, jumping up and down.
Whenever I put them, like all those crowd shots of the Japanese fans always endear me to them. So I just go like, yes.
They just love the game.
And they always pick up after themselves. Them clean all those videos of them cleaning up the stands after. Just proper respectful rugby people. I love Japan. So I love actually both those teams. That was a great outcome for that tournament. And it's actually, we were saying from
Portugal completely outclassed Tonga earlier in the tournament, which was a bit of a shock.
It's a shock. You wouldn't have said that going in based on historical precedent. You'd be thinking
they can play.
There you go. Well, that means the future's bright because they're all only kids, and hopefully then they'll filter in, and we can
play
just
in some Rugby Europe games and hopefully get into the first division of that tournament.
And then we're looking for 10 years' time. Who knows what Portugal might be?
Yeah.
You know.
Well, on the evidence of that under-20 team, they have the potential to certainly make Rugby Europe a more interesting place.
For sure. Challenge the likes of Georgia. You know.
Yeah, absolutely.
And yes, what else do we have here? We have Stade Francais lock Andre Stassen is facing a ban for it's between 2 and 4 years for taking PED, some kind of prohibited substance. Yeah. Was that revealed what it was, or was it just a ban?
No, just a banned
substance.
Yeah.
So it could have been cocaine, but it could have also been a PED.
It seems like it's a PED. So I don't think you get 2 to 4 year sentences for cocaine.
No, actually historically not.
No.
But so it probably is. It's not unprecedented. It's not actually that surprising, to be honest, but it is disappointing.
Yeah. Well, it's just. I don't know that we have enough information or even energy at this point to get into a detailed discussion on the matter. But it's important to keep your finger on the pulse of cheating and
how it's dealt with more so. Even I kind of like the process of for cheating getting disciplined is the most important. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of comes to light during the trial period of it, and if he's.
I'm optimistic that at the top level of the game, cautiously optimistic that cheating isn't widespread.
Yes,
and hopeful that that's the case and that this is an outlier. But just a word of warning. Just keep
it's important keeping in mind because it's
unjustifiable behavior.
It is unjustifiable behavior, but there are cultures in the rugby world where it's just accepted and the done thing. So you
don't know.
You just don't know. But it is always disappointing, and it's something that you really don't want in the game. Don't want it in any sport, and you do want these random, because it was courtesy of a random screening that he got found out. Yeah, you want more of them.
You want them constantly. Yeah,
you want them
absolutely
picking the guys out who have been guilty of it and punishing them duly for it. Which, if he is guilty of it, I hope due punishment awaits, because I think a 2 to 4 year ban is appropriate deterrent.
Yeah,
it could
that's your livelihood. That's 4 years of your livelihood.
Exactly, and it's worth it. Draws into question the risk reward factor of doing it. Couple that with the fact that it's wrong anyway, and it's fundamentally less healthy, because you always see across the sports, it's any sports, you see these guys. Actually, UFC is a good analogy for it, because you see all these guys who were on steroids for several years, and then it's 10 years later, and now they're screening more. The guys are no longer on steroids, and their body is just looks ridiculous. Like they're still strong, but their muscles are all wrong. It's not good. Don't do drugs, kids.
No,
but indeed. Especially in rugby, to keep those PEDs away. Big enough anyway. But yeah, so that's one.
No matter how big you get, Damien McKenzie's still going to run around you.
That's exactly
Desmond
right. All the
Colby's still gonna
all the
run around
steroids
you.
in the world won't stop that from
Yeah,
happening.
yeah.
You're just going to go in, go out,
Yeah.
and then go in again. Oh, lightning. Yeah.
Indeed.
It's true. And then the other talk. Eddie Jones rears his head in the other news segment again, and it's because he's dropping players with no.
I don't even want to
due
talk about it.
cause.
It's arguably the biggest story yet that he's dropped Cipriani from his World Cup squad, and I've said everything.
Explain that to me.
I've said everything I need to say. About
Yeah, it was
Eddie Jones and
actually
his decision-making
last week's
process.
other news segment featured a pretty sizable rant about how he's getting a lot of selection policy wrong. Things like including Mike Brown, excluding the European Player of the Year, Alex Good, who's still not in the squad. And then Cipriani, who, to my mind, is just so obviously the only other viable option. You have Farrell at 10, and then if he goes down, the only other viable option for me is Cipriani. And he's not in the squad now. So it's going to be George Ford, who is impotent from 10. He's just
Another Bernard Foley.
He's another Bernard Foley.
Yeah.
He's not elite at all. He's not he's just about test level, but he's not an elite test level. He wouldn't be out of place in the Pacific Nations Cup.
Yeah.
Shouldn't be there starting for England or anywhere near it. Cipriani is a bit of fire and a bit of creativity, and so is Alex Good. And it seems like that's what he has an aversion to. He'd sooner see a Mike Brown who he knows will do the job he's asking of him and won't do anything too flash, but he also just won't create the try that's going to be needed.
His whole world will be shaken up if Owen Farrell goes down. The England, more than any other team, have the ability to withstand these terrible decisions because they have such depth.
So many talented
players. And they still have an incredible side that they can name, with Henry Slade, who can create, with Owen Farrell, who can create, with Johnny May, who can finish, and with other
Toji's and Vunipolas in there, and
massive
you're just
players.
Like, you can still name a 15 from the squad he has left that are awesome.
Yeah, a phenomenal team. But if Owen Farrell goes down, I think the plans are kaput. Yeah. And I think Cipriani could have been a mitigation.
A little deputy to Faz to kind of come in, like what we were saying about the Springboks, where with the B team they just showed, it was still the same true line. Like, you're dropping Faf, you're dropping Pollard, you're dropping Villy, but you still have Yankees and Gellant, and they actually play a similar game, so you're not changing too much. Cipriani could have been something similar for them, whereas like all throughout the Ford Farrell years, like everything changed fundamentally when the rotations came in, and suddenly the axe is all different. I just don't like it, because I think defences have fundamentally figured out that little dynamic anyway. I think Farrell is lesser from 12.
Oh, they're not going to do that.
I hope that
they're done with that.
I hope
thankfully.
so.
We've moved on,
because everyone's been shutting it down for years. But
Farrell's a 10.
Farrell is 10. He is the best 10 they have. But Cipriani, I would have liked to have seen occupying the 22 jersey for the World Cup. That's what I saw in him. That's what I saw in his Gloucester season. I saw it more in his Gloucester season than George Ford's captaining Leicester season. He was
he with Leicester?
He was captain of Leicester this year in their worst ever showing, and it's just it makes no sense. Where does form happen in Eddie's mind? There seems to be no room for form.
I had
in
this
the England
exact
team.
rant last week. I mean, we've said enough. The mind blows. They're the only team in the world that could withstand this many selection mistakes, but even so,
it's the first time in my memory, it's the Alex Good point again, but I cannot remember a time in the last 10 years that the European Player of the Year is not starting for his country. Like, not only not starting, he's not in the squad.
There must have been one.
I don't know, there's
been years... Did Isiwa not win one?
Ooh. Yeah. Might have done, but then I think it was Rob Kearney definitely won one. Sean O'Brien definitely won one. Stewie Hogg definitely won one. I'm trying to remember who else.
Probably Farrell.
Yeah. But it's it's the first time he's not in the squad.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's
crazy. There's no saying it's not crazy, because it's crazy.
Yeah. So Eddie Jones, he's at it again. Essentially, is the only headline, and we're not going to go into too much detail about it, because we've already said it, and it's going to happen again next week, and we're going to have it. It's going to be there in our notes again.
Some other
Eddie Jones,
great player who's just gotten rid of, because I don't know. It's a bizarre one. It's a bizarre one. I
don't know. Itoji's dropped next week. Who knows?
Very strange. But it will likely cost them in the end. But there you go. The last bit of news is just a little update to the Sia Khaleesi injury.
Obviously, we all saw him being the best water boy ever to don that.
That bid. And he's been such a massive part of this South African turnaround. He is such an awesome bloke. He's so seemingly selfless in everything that he's doing, and as captain of that team, and that was embodied by his water boy role last week. but he was very much a part of that very positive South African picture.
He's
that was
been
being
Rassie's
painted.
guy. He's been the go-to guy for Rassie, obviously because it's been meritocracy and he's been their best player for the last few years.
He paid his dues in that Alistair Coetzee team of being the only player working his hole off when they were losing by 57 points to the All Blacks.
Yeah.
He was there doing his damnedest and getting very annoyed under the posts, and now it's been a great turnaround for him. But apparently his injury, which we initially thought was going to be the first couple of weeks of the Rugby Championship, he's now actually out for the Rugby Championship and kind of sweating it for the
so he's touch and go. He better be on that plane, man. I'll be sickened if he doesn't make the plane.
He just belongs there.
Yeah.
Actually, just as a bloke, he deserves it. And the Box obviously could use him because
100%.
he
their
belongs
captain.
in a World 15 jersey. Like he's that good.
Yeah, so it's we're wishing him all the best on his recovery. We really want to see Sia Khaleesi in the World Cup.
That's how
even if it means knocking us out in the quarterfinals, he needs to be there.
There's no justice in a world where Khaleesi doesn't play. I'd like get him on there. He's one of the greats. We've already had enough heartbreak with D-Mac and Josh van der Fleer. Is it Josh or Dan Levy? Excuse me.
Josh is going to be Dan Levy's going to.
Dan Levy and D-Mac, the two blonde lads.
Yeah.
We don't need to be joined by Sia Khaleesi.
No.
So
please make it. Recover well. Go and see Waisaki's Witch Doctor. Get yourself in order.
Absolutely. we're all pulling for you and rooting for you. So
well, with that,
I think that's everything.
We'll wrap up. Thanks again for watching. It was a bit of a late one. If the lighting is a bit dark, it's because we're shooting pretty late on a Thursday. We're going to try our best to get this uploaded and ready for your consumption by the weekend. It has been
a hectic week over here, so we managed to get one out for you, and looking massively forward to the games. And keep an eye out just in case we live stream one of the games on Saturday morning, just as a test.
We might be doing that on YouTube. It'll be a covert enough one, but if you're online at the time, sure, drop a comment and say hello.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, boys. With that, we'll see you later on. Thanks for watching.
Guys.
Bye. All right, you're up. Do you want to give it a go?
If you haven't noticed, folks, we've switched chairs.
Yes.
Different angle.
Nice. Just hit a little low. Oh, same spot.
Yeah.
Weird one.
There you go.